You checked your bank balance at midnight, maybe twice, running the same numbers again, wondering if it will stretch to the end of the month. It will. It won't. It might. There's a particular kind of exhaustion that has nothing to do with your body. It's the weight of numbers you've run 100 times today. The same math, the same answer, the same quiet dread sitting somewhere just below your ribs. You're tired, but your mind won't stop auditing, won't stop preparing for a catastrophe that hasn't arrived yet. You know that feeling. And tonight, we're going to set it down together. Welcome to Soulnest. I'm so glad you found your way here tonight, genuinely. This space was made for exactly this moment, for the version of you that's been holding it together all day and just needs somewhere soft to land. So come in, come home to yourself. You are safe here. Go ahead and shift your pillow. Find that one cool spot and let your head sink into it like it's been waiting for you. Pull your blanket up and feel the way it settles, heavy and unhurried, like the last exhale of a long day. Now breathe in slowly and let it go. Your breath is a tide. It doesn't need your help to keep moving. Just let it. Picture a small kitchen, 11:40 at night, a single lamp on the counter casting everything in amber. Someone has left a half-drunk cup of tea going cold beside a stack of unopened mail. Outside, rain taps the window, patient, indifferent, almost kind. Nothing is being solved right now. And somehow, in this moment, that's okay. Tonight, we leave the noise behind and simply let the world exist without us. And in the space that opens up after that sentence, in the small, tender silence between one day ending and another not yet begun, something interesting happens. The arithmetic stops. Not because it's solved, not because the numbers finally cooperated, but because you, at last, have decided to put the pencil down. There is a particular cruelty to financial anxiety at night. It does not arrive loudly. It arrives the way cold does, slowly from the edges, until you realize the whole room has changed temperature. You were fine a moment ago, then a thought, then another. And suddenly, you are running calculations at midnight that not a single calculation will actually fix. The mind, bless its relentless heart, genuinely believes that if it worries harder and longer, it will somehow arrive at safety. It never does, but it tries, faithfully, every night, like a dog waiting at a door that no longer leads anywhere useful. The room around you holds its breath. Notice the pale glow leaking underneath the door, that thin line of light from a world that is, for now, not asking anything of you. The refrigerator offers its low, rhythmic thrum, indifferent and ancient, the sound of ordinary life simply continuing. The air carries a faint metallic coolness, the ghost of tonight's rain still present, settling like sediment into the quiet. These are the textures of a world that is not in crisis. Only the mind is. And the mind, you are learning, is not always the most reliable narrator of what is true. Here is what is actually true right now. You are horizontal. You are warm. The ceiling above you is not moving. Whatever liminal space exists between what you have and what you fear you might lose, it is not located in this room, in this moment, in this breath. It lives in the future, which is a country you are not visiting tonight. There is a subterranean exhaustion beneath financial fear that has nothing to do with money at all. It is the exhaustion of feeling like your safety is a performance, like the moment you stop managing, stop vigilating, stop holding it all in careful tension, something will collapse. But safety was never a thing you performed. It was always something you came back to, like breath, like sleep, like this. Let your hands go soft. Let the soft weight of this moment press you gently into stillness. The ledger can wait. You cannot be improved upon tonight. And so the ledger waits, patient as stone, indifferent as winter. It will be there tomorrow, exactly as you left it. Not a single number changed by the hours you spent losing sleep over it. There is something almost comedic about that, if you are willing to look at it sideways. The spreadsheet does not suffer, only you do. And tonight, you are choosing, gently and without ceremony, to stop suffering on its behalf. Because here is what no one talks about. The calculation itself is not the hard part. The hard part is the constancy of it, the way it runs like a background process you never installed and cannot uninstall. You are not always thinking about money, but some part of you always is. It hums beneath conversations, beneath meals, beneath moments that were supposed to be simple. A song comes on that you love, and before the first chorus ends, a number surfaces. A quiet evening exists briefly, then the arithmetic arrives, uninvited, pulling up a chair. The room around you is still. The silence here has a particular texture, not hollow, but dense, like wool pressed close, the kind of quiet that asks nothing and offers everything. Somewhere near the window, the ghost heat of a phone screen has long since faded to black. The night has done its slow work of cooling everything down, drawing the warmth out of surfaces the way it always does, unhurried, impartial. You have been the treasurer of your own life for so long that you have forgotten there is also a person living it. The mind that runs the numbers is the same mind that once watched light move across a floor and thought it was beautiful. That mind is still in there, tired, yes, worn at the edges, certainly, but present. It did not leave. It simply got assigned too many tasks. One thing rarely said aloud. No amount of mental calculation performed between midnight and morning has ever changed a bill, not once in the entire history of worrying. And yet you return, loyal as ever, to the numbers. There is something almost noble about it, in a very exhausting way. You are trying, in the only language anxiety knows, to protect the people and the life you love. But protection does not live in the counting. It lives in the rest. In the restored version of you that wakes tomorrow with a clearer mind and steadier hands. The calculating mind needs you to sleep. Even the numbers need you rested. Let the figures dissolve into the dark. They are just symbols. You are not. And yet, and here is where it gets tender, somewhere along the way, the symbols started to feel like a mirror. The number in an account began to reflect something back at you that felt uncomfortably personal. Not just a balance, a verdict. And that is what we are sitting with tonight, gently, without judgment. in the particular stillness that only exists at this hour. Because a financial setback does not only hurt the wallet, it reaches further than that into something older and quieter. Your sense of what you deserve, what you are capable of, what your presence in the world is worth. No one tells you this will happen. No one warns you that a declined card or a missed payment or a year that simply did not go as planned could feel, in the quiet privacy of your own mind, like evidence of something fundamentally wrong with you. And yet, here you are, knowing exactly what that feels like. A thin bar of moonlight has found its way across the far wall, moving imperceptibly the way all true things move, slowly, without announcement. The air in the room carries a faint coolness now, the night having fully arrived, pressing gently against the warmth still held in the fabric beneath you. The silence is amber thick, layered, the kind that makes small sounds, a distant car, a settling floorboard, feel almost sacred. There's something worth pausing on here. Money is, by any honest account, one of the most recent inventions in the long story of being human. And yet, we have given it enormous power over how we feel about ourselves. Civilizations rose for millennia before the mortgage existed. Your worth is older than the system that is currently measuring it. Let that land for a moment. The self that existed before the setback, curious, warm, capable of love and laughter and sudden inexplicable joy, that self did not leave when the numbers changed. It simply got very quiet, the way a person gets quiet when they are waiting to feel safe enough to speak again. You have not lost yourself. You have only been waiting in the hallway of your own life for the noise to settle. And it is settling now, right here. The moonlight moves another fraction of an inch across the wall. Your breath continues its ancient, unhurried work. Whatever the world has decided to measure you by today, this room holds a different accounting, one that tallies warmth and presence and the simple fact that you are still here. That has always been worth more than you know. And yet, knowing something and feeling it are two entirely different countries, separated by a distance that no amount of logic can simply walk across. You can understand intellectually that your value is not housed in a bank account, and still, in the raw, unguarded hours of the night, there is something that feels very much like shame, quiet, persistent, sitting just behind the sternum, like a stone that arrived so gradually you stopped noticing its weight. Shame about money is one of the most isolating experiences a person can carry, and one of the least spoken about. It does not announce itself at dinner tables. It does not come up in casual conversation. It lives in the liminal spaces, the pause before you check your balance, the careful way you change the subject, the private arithmetic of what you can and cannot admit to. You have likely carried this alone and in silence for longer than you should have had to. That matters. That deserves to be acknowledged. Outside, the last of the night rain has settled into the gutters, finding its slow way toward somewhere lower. The window glass holds a faint condensation, each small droplet a perfect, unhurried world. Inside, the rhythmic thrum of the house at rest continues its deep subterranean hum. The blanket across your chest rises and falls, keeping its own patient time. The room is the color of charcoal and amber, soft at every edge. There is a small contradiction worth sitting with. Shame thrives on the belief that your situation is uniquely, embarrassingly yours, that everyone else has quietly figured something out that you missed. They have not. Financial insecurity is among the most shared human experiences on earth. It simply wears the costume of personal failure so convincingly that almost no one compares notes. You are not uniquely behind. You are simply human in a system that was not designed to make this easy. The shame you carry is not evidence of who you are. It is evidence of how hard you have been trying to hold a standard that was handed to you before you were old enough to question whether it was true. Security was supposed to look a certain way, a number, a milestone, a feeling of arrival. But arrival, it turns out, is not a financial event. It is a decision, a quiet, recurring decision to come home to yourself exactly as you are, in exactly this moment. The stone behind your sternum is not permanent. It only stays when no one acknowledges it. So let this be the acknowledgement. You are seen. You are not behind. You are here. And here, in this specific, unhurried moment, you are also breathing, perhaps for the first time today, without agenda, without bracing, without the particular tension that arrives every time a number needs to be faced. That tension has a name, and tonight we are going to look at it together, quietly, the way you might look at something that once frightened you and realize, in the softer light, that it was smaller than it seemed. There is a certain kind of breath holding that has nothing to do with the lungs. You know the one? The moment before you open a banking app, the suspended animation between submitting a payment and waiting to see whether it clears. The way the body goes very still, almost reverential, as if stillness itself could tip the outcome. You have become, without anyone asking you to, an expert in this particular form of suspension. A person fluent in the language of almost enough, almost covered, almost safe. The night has reached its deepest register now. The silence carries a crystalline quality, sharp and clean, the kind that amplifies small sounds into something almost architectural. The faint tick of a cooling wall, the soft give of the mattress as you shift, the breath moving through the room like it has always known the way. On the nightstand, the dark face of a phone rests face down, its ghost light extinguished. The numbers it holds are not your business until morning. The curious truth at the center of this chapter, the holding of breath does not pause the bill. The body's suspension, that ancient animal bracing for impact, does not change what arrives in the inbox. And yet you hold it anyway, every time, as loyal to the ritual as a tide. Because somewhere beneath the logic, the body believes that if it makes itself very small and very still, perhaps the difficulty will simply pass by without noticing. It is one of the most human things you do, and it is exhausting in ways that sleep itself barely reaches. But notice, right now, the breath that is moving through you without your supervision. It did not wait for permission. It did not check the balance first. It simply continued, as it has continued every moment of your life, through every financial season, every close call, every month that felt impossible and somehow still passed. The breath always knew you were going to be all right. It never once stopped to doubt it. And perhaps that is where we begin tonight, not with an argument or a reassurance, but with a simple, radical observation. Something in you has been keeping you alive and moving and present through every hard season, without condition, without requiring you to first reach a certain number. That something does not consult the balance. It has never once asked whether you deserved to continue. It simply continues, because you are worth continuing, not when the account improves. Now, as you are, in this exact, imperfect, quietly breathing moment. Here's the thing no financial system will ever tell you, because it was not designed to. Your worth existed before money was invented to measure it. You arrived in the world with a value that predates every currency, every credit score, every metric the modern world has constructed to sort and rank the living. And somewhere, beneath the years of conditioning that quietly suggested otherwise, you already know this. The knowing just gets buried sometimes under the weight of the numbers. The room holds you in its particular warm suspension. The ceiling, a pale moonlit field above you. The walls, their familiar, steadfast selves. The air carries the last breath of the night's coolness, tactile and clean against the skin of your forearm where it rests outside the blanket. Somewhere in the walls, a pipe carries water to somewhere else, a soft, rhythmic thrum of a house doing its quiet, faithful work. These things do not know what is in your account. They simply hold you anyway. There is a quiet paradox at the heart of this chapter worth naming softly. The very fact that you lie awake worrying about whether you are doing enough, providing enough, being enough, is itself evidence of a profound depth of care. Indifference does not lose sleep, only love does. Only people who carry others in their chest, who feel the weight of responsibility as something sacred, worry the way you worry. The anxiety, as maddening as it is a portrait of how much you value the life you are trying to protect. But protection built on self-erasure eventually collapses. You cannot subtract yourself from the equation and still call it a life. So let this be a quiet reintroduction. The person in this bed, warm, breathing, worn at the edges and still entirely whole, is not a reflection of a number. They are the author of every ordinary moment that made this life worth the trouble of financing in the first place. The account can change. You are always the asset. And if you can hold that truth, even loosely, even just for the length of an exhale, then consider this. The same logic extends further than money, further than output, further than the list of things you did or did not accomplish today. Because somewhere between the first alarm and this moment, a quiet verdict was delivered about whether the day was enough, whether you were enough. And tonight, with the particular tenderness this hour allows, we are going to examine who issued that verdict and whether they had any real authority to do so. In a world where output determines income, productivity stops being a preference and becomes a form of protection. When what you produce is directly tied to what you can afford, the rent, the groceries, the margin between comfortable and crisis, then slowing down stops feeling like a choice. It begins to feel like a financial risk, and so the belief quietly hardens. If I am not producing, I am not safe. Not just unproductive, unsafe. There is a modern affliction that has no fever and no visible wound. The belief that your value is a function of your output, that rest must be earned, that a day without measurable achievement is, in some subterranean way, a day that counts against you. You likely absorbed this before you were old enough to question it, from systems and institutions that needed your productivity far more than they needed your wholeness. And so the ledger expanded. It was no longer just money. It became hours, tasks, emails answered, goals pursued, potential maximized. The self became a project with deliverables. The window holds a skin of condensation, each small bead of moisture tracing its own slow, unhurried path toward the sill, going nowhere urgent, answering to nothing but gravity. The room breathes its deep nocturnal breath. The blanket carries the accumulated warmth of your body, a quiet weight that asks nothing in return for the comfort it offers. On the far wall, a sliver of amber light from somewhere outside rests without purpose, simply present, simply illuminating nothing in particular. It is worth noticing with some gentleness. You are a human being, a designation that has somehow been quietly rebranded as a human doing. The original title contained no performance metrics, no quarterly review, no minimum viable output to justify continued existence. And yet, here you are, conducting your own annual appraisal at midnight and docking points for rest. You did things today. Perhaps not all the things, perhaps not the right things by someone's measure. But the body that carried you through that day, the mind that worried and planned and tried and occasionally despaired, that is not a machine that failed to meet quota. That is a person, a full, complicated, trying their best person. The most productive thing you can do right now is absolutely nothing. To lie here and let the night do its slow restoration. To trust that you will be of more use to everything you love if you arrive tomorrow having actually slept. You are allowed to stop, even now, especially now. And in the stopping, in this precise liminal suspension between doing and simply being, something worth noticing begins to emerge. The body, released from its obligations, starts to report what is actually true, not what the mind has been projecting, not the catalog of futures that haven't happened yet, but what is actually, presently, tactilely real, and what is real right now in this room, in this breath, is something the anxious mind rarely pauses long enough to register. You are safe, not perfectly, not permanently, but right now, in this moment, you are safe. Here is the distinction that changes everything and that no one draws clearly enough. Feeling unsafe and being unsafe are not the same country. They share a border. They speak a similar language, but they are profoundly, consequentially different. And the nervous system, brilliant and ancient as it is, was never designed to tell them apart. It responds to a frightening thought with the same faithful urgency it brings to a genuine threat. It cannot help this. It was built for a world where the danger was always immediate, always physical, always resolvable by running or standing ground. It was not built for a mortgage. It was not built for an overdraft notice, and yet here it is, doing its absolute best with tools that predate the invention of paper currency by several thousand years. The room holds its deep, wool-thick silence, the kind that presses softly against the ears, present and unhurried. A pale geometry of moonlight has crossed the floor during these hours, its slow migration the only evidence that time is still moving at all. The blanket rises with your breath, a slow, settling warmth redistributing itself in the most gentle of adjustments. The walls hold their patient watch. Nothing in this room is in crisis. The room knows something your nervous system is still learning. The quiet paradox, of course, is that the very sophistication that makes humans capable of imagining the future, that extraordinary world-building capacity for projection, is the same faculty that keeps you awake rehearsing catastrophes that exist only in possibility. You are, in a very real sense, suffering in advance, paying an emotional tax on a disaster that may never arrive in a currency of sleep you cannot afford to spend. So let the body be your witness tonight, not the mind, the body, the unheld hands, the jaw that has, somewhere in the last few minutes, unclenched, the breath arriving without effort, without fear, without agenda. This is what safe feels like. It was here all along, waiting patiently beneath the noise for you to come home to it. And home, you are learning, is not a financial destination. It is not a number, not a milestone, not the moment you finally arrive at whatever threshold the comparing mind has decided represents enough. Home is this, the breath, the room, the quiet that holds you without condition. And yet, the comparing mind is persistent, isn't it? It has its own agenda. It has been collecting evidence all day, measuring the distance between your life and someone else's highlight reel, and it would very much like to present its findings now, at this hour when you are least equipped to cross-examine them. Financial comparison is perhaps the most privately practiced form of self-diminishment. It happens in the space of a single scroll, a passing conversation, a glimpsed number that wasn't meant for you. Someone mentions a salary, a holiday, a home renovation, and something in you quietly recalibrates, placing yourself on a scale that wasn't there a moment before. The wound is clean and immediate, and the cruelest part is that you are comparing your interior, all the complexity and struggle and subterranean reality of your actual life, against someone else's carefully composed exterior. It is, by design, an unwinnable audit. The night has thickened into its most absolute register. The silence now carries a crystalline, almost mineral quality, the hush of a world that has agreed, collectively, to lay its measuring tools down. A thin frost of moonlight coats the objects on the nightstand, each one rendered artifact still. The dark screen of a phone, the small geometry of a glass, the soft architecture of folded fabric. Nothing here is in competition with anything else. Each object simply occupies its space with total, unself-conscious completeness. What is true right now and worth meeting with compassion? The people you are comparing yourself to are, in all likelihood, comparing themselves to someone else entirely. The comparison does not terminate at the top. It is an infinite corridor of perceived inadequacy, and everyone inside it is convinced they are standing nearest the bottom. You are not uniquely behind. You are simply a person who cares in a world that monetized caring and then handed everyone a scoreboard. Your story is not their story. Your timeline is not their timeline. Your life, with its specific textures and particular sorrows and irreplaceable moments of grace, cannot be converted into a comparable unit without losing everything that makes it true. The scale was never accurate. You were always measuring the wrong thing. What you have is a life, and a life at its core was never meant to be a competition. It was meant to be lived, and living, real living, has always required the one thing the anxious mind resists most faithfully: the willingness to not know exactly how it ends, to move forward anyway, to release, even temporarily, the white-knuckled need to have the entire future mapped, secured, and accounted for before permission is granted to rest. And so here, in this particular chapter, we arrive at perhaps the most quietly radical invitation of the entire night. You do not have to solve this tonight. Not any of it. Not one single piece. There is a specific species of midnight suffering that deserves its own name: the compulsive rehearsal of financial futures that haven't happened yet. You have likely visited it often. It begins, innocuously enough, with a single legitimate concern, and then the mind, in its industrious way, begins to extrapolate. One worry opens a door, and behind that door is a corridor, and the corridor has doors of its own. Before long, you are not solving a problem. You are catastrophizing across a timeline that extends years into a future that does not yet exist, using information that is incomplete at an hour when the brain's capacity for rational resolution is, to put it gently, not at its finest. The room exists in its most ancient stillness now. The pale trace of outside light has shifted almost imperceptibly across the ceiling, mapping time in a language older than clocks. The air carries a subterranean coolness, the deep breath of a night fully committed to its own quiet work. The blanket has grown warm with your body's particular heat, a small private climate that belongs entirely to this moment, this body, this unhurried dark. There is something almost humorous in it, if you can hold it gently. The future you are trying to solve tonight will be navigated by a version of you that does not yet exist. That future self will have information you don't currently have, capacities you haven't yet developed, and the lived experience of every day between now and then. You are trying to do their work for them in advance, without their resources, while exhausted. It is an extraordinary act of misplaced devotion. The problems will still be there in the morning. They are remarkably loyal that way. They will wait, and you will meet them, not tonight, not from this bed, but tomorrow, rested and restored, with clearer eyes and steadier hands. Tonight has one task only: to let you go, and it is already doing it. You are already dissolving into the dark, softly, at last, like a question that no longer needs an answer. And in that dissolving, in that gradual, unhurried release, something else begins to surface. Not a worry, not a calculation, something older and quieter than either of those. It is the part of you that remembers, the part that has been keeping a record the anxious mind perpetually overlooks, the record not of what went wrong, but of every single time you found a way through it anyway. Because here is what the fear conveniently forgets. Every time it arrives with its familiar urgency, you have been here before. Not here exactly, not this particular configuration of difficulty, but in the territory. In the tight months, in the seasons when the numbers didn't cooperate and the ground felt uncertain and you lay awake in rooms not so different from this one, running calculations that led nowhere, carrying weights you weren't sure you could continue carrying. And yet you are here, in this bed, in this night, on the other side of every single one of those seasons, without exception. The ceiling above you holds its patient witness, pale and still as a winter lake. The room has reached its deepest temperature now, the night having completed its slow descent, and the blanket's deepened weight has become something almost indistinguishable from the body itself, warm and continuous and quietly sustaining. On the nightstand, the artifacts of an ordinary life rest in their amber suspension. The glass, the phone, the small accumulated evidence of a person who is, against all the odds anxiety likes to cite, still here and still trying. The quiet reversal worth carrying into sleep is this. You have a survival rate, so far, of 100%. Every financial storm that felt unsurvivable has, without exception, been survived. Not always gracefully, not always without cost, but survived with a tenacity so habitual you have stopped recognizing it as remarkable. You have made meals from almost nothing. You have stretched what couldn't be stretched. You have asked for help when pride made it feel impossible, or found a way when help wasn't available. You have done this quietly, without applause, often without even acknowledging it to yourself. That is not nothing. That is, in fact, extraordinary. You already knew how to do this. So let the body soften now around the truth of its own resilience. Let the breath carry it down into the deeper registers of the night. Every season that came for you eventually became a season you left behind. This one will too. You already know how to survive it. You have always known. And perhaps that is the most important thing to carry as we move through this part of the night together. Not a solution, not a strategy, not a promise that the numbers will cooperate, but a recognition of something that has been true this entire time, hiding in plain sight beneath all the worry and the weight. The fact that you keep showing up, quietly, consistently, without fanfare, without a guarantee of outcome, without anyone necessarily noticing or recording it in the margins. You show up, day after day, in the face of uncertainty that would exhaust a lesser resolve. That is not ordinary. That is, by any honest reckoning, a form of courage that is still learning its own name. The world has a very specific idea of what strength looks like. It tends to be loud, declarative, visible from a distance. It does not often account for the strength of the person who rises on a Tuesday morning when the account is low and the outlook is uncertain and the weight of the previous night's worry still sits in the body like silt, and makes the coffee anyway, gets dressed anyway, opens the door and steps into the day anyway. This kind of strength does not make headlines. It does not arrive with recognition attached, but it is, in its quiet persistence, the most durable kind there is. The room around you has completed its long nocturnal shift. The darkness is at its most absolute now, a deep blue-black suspension that presses softly at the windows, unhurried, total. The blanket has conformed entirely to the architecture of your body, a second skin of warmth that asks nothing and holds everything. Somewhere outside, a single bird has made its first tentative sound. One note, then silence, then one note again, like a small system rebooting itself in the dark. The world is very slowly beginning its return. One thing rarely acknowledged aloud and worth meeting with genuine tenderness. You spent all of today showing up for a life that you spent all of tonight worrying wasn't enough. Both things happened in the same body, on the same day, with the same heart. The showing up and the doubting, the effort and the fear. They coexist as they always have, not because you are broken, but because you are human, which is to say, capable of extraordinary effort and extraordinary self-doubt in the very same breath. The doubt does not cancel the showing up. It never has. Every day you continued, despite it is a day the doubt was wrong. Let that be something you carry into the next part of the night, not as a conclusion, but as a companion. Not the weight of what remains unsolved, but the quiet, still unfolding fact of your own persistence. You showed up today. Something in you is already preparing to show up again. That is beginning to be enough, and it is becoming more. And if you can let that settle, not just as a consolation, but as a genuine, structural truth about the nature of progress, then perhaps this chapter can offer something the anxious mind rarely grants itself: the permission to count the small things, to let them matter, to resist the deeply ingrained habit of dismissing incremental movement because it does not yet look like arrival. Because here is what the relentless pursuit of the dramatic breakthrough consistently obscures. Almost nothing important happens all at once. Almost everything that has ever grown, healed, or improved has done so quietly, in increments so small they were nearly invisible in the moment, and only recognizable in retrospect when enough of them had accumulated to constitute something undeniable. The mind that is suffering financially has a particular blind spot. It tends to register only the distance remaining and almost never the distance already covered. The deficit is vivid, immediate, tactile. The progress, the bill that was paid, the small saving held, the month that was managed, the choice made under pressure that was wiser than it needed to be, that recedes almost immediately into the background, unremarkable, uncelebrated, quietly erased. You have been tracking your shortfalls in high resolution while keeping your progress in the dimmest possible light. This is not a character flaw. It is a survival bias. It simply is not the whole picture. The first gray suggestion of morning has begun its slow arrival at the edge of the window. Not yet light, but the memory of light. A liminal softening of the dark's absolute hold. The room has not changed, and yet everything in it carries a slightly different quality now, as though the objects have been very gently restored overnight. The nightstand's artifacts patient and still, the blanket's gathered warmth continuous and faithful, the air holding its cool, clean suspension before the day reclaims it. There is a small contradiction that deserves a moment of genuine amusement. You would celebrate a friend effusively for the exact financial progress you refuse to acknowledge in yourself. The same step that would earn another person your warmth and recognition gets filed in your own case, under not enough yet. You have been applying two entirely different standards in the same breath and somehow finding this reasonable. It is not reasonable. It is, however, very human. Every small payment made under duress was an act of discipline. Every month survived was evidence of resourcefulness. Every modest step forward, taken while carrying the weight of uncertainty, was, by any fair accounting, a quietly remarkable thing. The small things built every large thing that has ever existed. Your small things are building something too. You may not be able to see it yet, but it is accumulating steadily in the dark, the way all real things grow. And it is in this dark, in this patient, fertile quiet, that we arrive at perhaps the most tender question of the entire night. Not what you need more of, not what is missing, not what remains to be solved, but what you have been asking money to provide that it was never in its original design equipped to give. Because beneath the financial anxiety, beneath the calculations and the comparisons and the fear, there is a deeper ask, an older one that no account balance, however generous, has ever been able to fully answer. What you are really seeking when the wanting goes quiet enough to be honest is not a number. It is a feeling, safety, enoughness, the sensation of being held by something larger than your own effort, the permission, finally, to exhale all the way down. These are not financial needs. They are human ones, ancient, legitimate, and achingly real. And money, to its credit, can sometimes approximate them, can buffer, can create conditions, but it cannot manufacture belonging. It cannot install worthiness. It cannot make you feel, at the cellular level, that you are fundamentally, unconditionally safe. That particular piece comes from somewhere it has no jurisdiction. The window holds the earliest suggestion of dawn now, a barely perceptible shift, less a color than an intimation of one, the darkness thinning at its own unhurried pace. The room breathes its final nocturnal breath, the air carrying its last cool note before the day begins its slow warming. The objects on the nightstand have kept their faithful vigil through the night. The glass, the phone face down in its own settled darkness, the small architecture of ordinary life undisturbed. Here is the curious truth the modern world would rather not examine too closely. The wealthiest people in recorded history have, with remarkable consistency, reported the same subterranean longing as everyone else, the feeling of not quite enough, the reaching for something that keeps receding, because the destination was misidentified at the start. The map was drawn to the wrong location. What you are looking for was never at the end of the financial journey. It was the quality of attention you brought to the journey itself, the moments of connection, the experience of being truly seen, the warmth of a room at night, the breath that continues without asking for anything in return. The feeling you have been trying to purchase has been available without cost in every ordinary moment you were present enough to receive it. It was always here. You were always home. And home in this moment is asking something of you that financial pressure has spent a long time making feel dangerous. It is asking you to rest, not when the pressure lifts, not when the numbers resolve, not on the other side of some future threshold that keeps quietly moving as you approach it. Now, here, inside the difficulty, not beyond it. And this particular permission, is perhaps the most quietly revolutionary thing this entire night has been building toward. Because rest, real rest, has never required the absence of problems. It has only ever required the willingness to set them down temporarily, with the understanding that picking them back up tomorrow does not make you irresponsible. It makes you human. There is a belief so deeply held it rarely surfaces as a belief at all, that resting under financial pressure is a form of negligence, that the responsible thing, the serious thing, is to remain vigilant, to stay alert to every shifting variable, to keep the worry close, as though proximity to the problem constitutes progress on it. You have perhaps been treating anxiety as a form of due diligence, as though worrying hard enough is a strategy, as though the person who sleeps through the pressure is somehow less invested than the person who lies awake inside it. The night outside has reached its most complete expression, a blue-black velvet suspension that presses softly at every window, neither urgent nor indifferent, simply present in the way that deep things are present. The room holds a stillness so textured it is almost tactile, a silence with weight and warmth, the particular hush of a world that has, for these hours, agreed to ask nothing of anyone. The blanket has become indistinguishable from rest itself, warm, continuous, unhurried. A single filament of pre-dawn light traces the very edge of the curtain, patient as a promise. Here is the gentle, almost comedic truth that anxiety never volunteers. The problems that feel most urgent at 3 in the morning are identical to the problems that exist at 3 in the afternoon. They did not grow overnight. They only felt larger because the darkness removed every other reference point and exhaustion stripped away your capacity to contextualize them. You are not perceiving more clearly. You are perceiving more alone. Rest is not surrender. It is not avoidance. It is the maintenance of the instrument you need to actually address the pressure when morning gives you the tools to do so. The most radical act available to you right now is to close your eyes and mean it, to let the night be sufficient, to let tomorrow be tomorrow's concern. The pressure will wait. It always does. But you are allowed to go now. The dark is soft, the room is warm, and you have more than earned this. And as you settle more deeply into that earning, into that permission, something worth noticing begins to occur. Not outside, not in the numbers or the circumstances or the unresolved landscape of tomorrow, but inside, a quality of stillness that is distinct from the stillness of the room, interior, subterranean. The particular quiet that arrives when the body finally believes, even provisionally, even just for the length of a few slow breaths, that it does not need to brace. This is not a small thing. This is, in fact, the thing the entire night has been gently moving toward. Because safety, real safety, the kind that does not depend on external conditions aligning perfectly before it is permitted, begins here. It has always begun here. The search for safety in the external world is one of the most understandable pursuits a person can undertake. Of course, you want the numbers to stabilize. Of course, you want the ground to feel solid beneath the financial decisions. These are not irrational desires. They are ancient, legitimate, encoded into the survival architecture of every human being who has ever lain awake in the dark doing arithmetic. And yet, by now, you have likely accumulated enough evidence to suspect what this night has been quietly confirming, that the external world, however cooperative it becomes, has never been able to provide the quality of safety the interior world is capable of generating. The goalpost moves. The threshold advances. Because the instrument that registers safety is located inside you, not in a bank. The pre-dawn air carries its particular mineral coolness now, clean and still, the night's last gift before the day reclaims the temperature. The room holds its deep, settled darkness, the curtain's edge tracing its faint, luminous seam. Your body, in the long course of this night, has grown heavier in the most graceful way. The heaviness of genuine release, of muscles that have at last received the message that they may stop guarding. The breath moves through you like a tide that has found its proper shore. Here is the quiet reversal that becomes available only in stillness. You have been searching for a feeling in a location where it was never stored. Safety is not a financial achievement. It is a practiced return, a coming back to the body, to the breath, to the room, to the simple evidence of continued existence. It is built incrementally, the way trust is built, through repeated small experiences of surviving the uncertainty and finding yourself intact on the other side. You are intact right now, in this breath. Behind whatever tomorrow holds, this is true. The safety you are looking for has your address. It has always known where to find you. And now, in this deep and patient hour, it has arrived. Not with fanfare, not with the resolution of every outstanding concern, but quietly, the way genuine things tend to arrive, through the body, through the breath, through the slow and accumulating evidence that you are still here, still held, still capable of receiving what the night is offering. And what the night is offering, specifically, is something your nervous system has not been given nearly enough of. Not just rest, but permission to rest. These are not the same thing. Rest without permission is just lying down with the engine still running. And the engine, as you know, can run a very long time on anxiety alone, long past the point where any useful work is being done. Your nervous system has been doing something extraordinary today, and for many days before today. It has been running its full emergency protocol, elevated cortisol, heightened threat scanning, accelerated heart rate, in response to a danger that is real in consequence but not immediate in presence. Financial stress is uniquely punishing at the physiological level because, unlike a physical threat that discharges through action, it has no natural off-ramp. There is no sprint to complete, no door to run through. The alarm simply stays on. The body holds the activation in the muscles, in the jaw, in the shallow upper chest breath, and the nervous system, receiving no all-clear signal, faithfully keeps the watch. The room has reached the hour of its most absolute softness. The darkness is no longer flat. It has depth and texture now, a rich, breathing blue-black that seems almost to move, to shift with the slow respiration of the house itself. The blanket has achieved a warmth so complete It no longer registers as separate from the body. On the ceiling, the faintest suggestion of reflected pre-dawn light moves in a slow, unhurried arc, the world continuing its ancient rotation, indifferent to deadlines, loyal only to its own deep rhythm. What the body already knows at this hour, the exhale is a homecoming. When the breath lengthens on the way out, longer than it was on the way in, something shifts, not in the room, in you. The shoulders soften without being asked. The jaw, which has been holding a conversation no one scheduled, quietly releases. The chest, which has been working all day like a fist, begins to open. This is not a metaphor. The long exhale travels a particular path, through the vagus nerve, into the heart's rhythm, down into the diaphragm, and the message it carries is ancient and simple. The watch is over. The body, receiving that signal, begins its own long unwinding. Nothing else is required. So give the nervous system what it has been waiting for all day. Not reassurance, not resolution, but signal. Let the jaw unhinge, just slightly. Let the shoulders find a lower position. Let the hands open, palms upward, like a person who has finally stopped holding something and discovered, in the releasing, that they feel lighter than expected. Breathe out longer than you breathe in. The body will do the rest. It has always known exactly what to do when you finally let it. And as the body loosens its long-held arguments against rest, something else becomes possible. Something that the controlling mind has been resisting all night with considerable ingenuity. The release of tomorrow. Not the abandonment of it. Not the pretense that it doesn't exist or that its concerns are not real, but the genuine, practiced, quietly courageous act of setting it down. Because here is what psychology has known for some time and what anxiety will never volunteer. The feeling of control and the fact of control are not the same thing. And at this hour, in this bed, you have been in devoted pursuit of one while having access only to the other. Control is one of the most sophisticated responses to financial anxiety and one of the least examined. It presents itself as responsibility, as diligence, as the behavior of a person who takes their life seriously. And in daylight hours, within reason, it serves a genuine purpose. But the mind's relationship with control is also where a quiet distortion enters. Psychologists call it the illusion of control, the deeply human tendency to mistake mental rehearsal for actual influence. The belief that if you hold the problem in your attention long enough, you are doing something to it. That vigilance constitutes leverage. It does not. The bill in the morning is identical whether you reviewed it 10 times tonight or none. The mental grip changes nothing in the external world. It only costs you sleep. The pre-dawn world outside has achieved a particular quality of suspension, not dark, not light, but the exquisite in-between, the held breath of a day not yet committed to arriving. The room mirrors this liminal register, the curtain's edge faintly luminous, the air carrying its last cool mineral note before warmth reclaims the morning. The objects on the nightstand have kept their patient, artifact-still vigil through every chapter of this night. The glass, the folded fabric, the face-down phone holding its numbers in the dark where they belong. There is a further twist worth sitting with. The controlling mind believes releasing grip is dangerous, that to stop managing is to invite catastrophe. But control maintained past its usefulness doesn't protect the future. It simply colonizes the present. It takes tonight, which is the only thing actually available to you right now, and spends it entirely on a tomorrow that has not yet agreed to exist on the terms you're negotiating. Tomorrow's finances will arrive with tomorrow. They will bring with them a version of you that has slept and thought and eaten and returned to the world with resources that simply do not exist at this hour. Open the hands. Let the tomorrow you've been gripping so tightly simply float from your open palms into the dark. It knows the way. It does not need to be held to arrive, and neither, finally, do you. So let this be the moment, unhurried, unceremonious, entirely yours, when you allow the world to continue without your supervision, not as a resignation, as a recognition of something larger than the worry. The world was running before you arrived in it, and it will run through the hours you are sleeping with exactly the same indifferent competence it has always applied. There is something almost humbling in this, if you let it be. The tides do not require your awareness to move. The accounts are not altered by your watching them. The morning does not arrive faster because you stayed awake to greet it. And yet something in you has believed with remarkable persistence that your wakefulness is load-bearing, that the conscientious thing, the caring thing, is to remain alert, to keep the worry burning like a lamp left on to deter intruders, as though your suffering constitutes a form of loyalty to the seriousness of your situation. This is one of anxiety's most elegant illusions, that witnessing a problem and working on a problem are the same act. They are not. One depletes the person who needs to be functional tomorrow. The other waits for them. The window now holds the unmistakable signature of approaching dawn, a deep blue at the horizon giving way to something softer, less committed to darkness, the sky in the slow, ancient process of remembering light. The room carries the final coolness of the night, that last clean breath of dark air that tastes faintly of rain and distance and the particular mineral silence of hours that asked nothing and gave everything. The blanket, the nightstand, the ceiling, all of it patient, all of it present, all of it utterly indifferent to the passage of time in the most comforting way imaginable. Consider what has continued without you in every previous night of your life: the rotation of the planet, the circulation of the oceans, the 10,000 invisible systems that constitute an ordinary morning. And consider this specifically: every financial problem you have ever solved was solved in the daylight by a rested mind with the tools that only wakefulness provides. Not a single one was resolved by lying awake with it in the dark. The dark is not the place for solutions. The dark is the place where the person who finds solutions goes to be restored. The emails will be there. The figures will be there. The decisions will be there, with your name on them, ready to be met with clarity rather than exhaustion. But right now, in this breath, in this room, there is nothing required of you. The world has the night shift. It is remarkably well staffed. And you are finally, beautifully, off the clock. Sleep now. everything that matters will still be there when you return. And in the returning, in that quiet, unhurried arrival back into wakefulness that tomorrow will bring, you will find that the world kept its word, that it waited, that not a single thing that truly mattered dissolved in your absence. But we are not there yet. We are here in this final chapter, in this last and most tender stretch of the night, sitting with something that has kept more people awake than perhaps any other single source of wakefulness. The belief that sleep requires resolution, that the mind must first arrive at answers before the body is permitted to rest, that uncertainty in sufficient quantity is simply incompatible with unconsciousness. Tonight, quietly and with complete sincerity, we are going to disagree with that belief entirely. You do not have all the answers. This is not a failing. It is the precise and honest condition of being alive inside an unfinished story. Every person who has ever slept throughout the entire history of sleeping has done so without the complete resolution of their circumstances. They closed their eyes while questions remained open, while outcomes were still pending, while the future held its usual indeterminate silence. Sleep has never required certainty as a precondition. The mind only recently began demanding it, and the mind, as this night has gently demonstrated, is not always the most reliable architect of what you actually need. The room around you has entered its final nocturnal expression, the darkness now threaded with the earliest, most tentative light. Neither one thing nor another, a liminal blue that belongs entirely to this hour and no other. The air holds its mineral stillness, cool and clean against any exposed skin. The last tactile gift of the night before warmth reclaims the morning. The blanket's steady warmth has become indistinguishable from rest itself. A continuous, unhurried warmth that asks nothing, holds everything, and has been here faithfully the entire time. Here is the quietest truth of the entire night, offered now at its close. The answers you are waiting for, the clarity that feels like a prerequisite for rest, are, without exception, more available to a rested mind. Sleep is not the obstacle between you and resolution. Sleep is the path. The sleeping mind does its own subterranean work, processing and integrating and arriving at mornings that carry, sometimes inexplicably, a lightness the night before did not. You are allowed to sleep inside the uncertainty. You are allowed to close your eyes before the story resolves. Rest here. That is enough. The breath does not wait for answers. The heart does not require resolution to continue. They simply proceed, faithful, unhurried, certain of nothing except the next moment, and the next, and the next. Let that be enough. Let yourself follow where they lead. The night is complete. You have done everything that could be done today. And now, at last, there is only this: the breath, the dark, the warmth, and the grace of simply letting go. And so the night has done its work, all of it, the worry, the reflection, the long and winding inventory of everything that weighs on you has been met, held, and gently set aside. The day has receded now, the way a tide goes out in darkness, without announcement, leaving behind only the cool, quiet shore of this moment, of this breath, of this room that has held you faithfully through every chapter without asking anything in return. You are not broken. You are in a chapter the world doesn't always have the language for, one that doesn't make the headlines, that doesn't look like struggle from the outside, but that takes everything you have from the inside, and it matters. Your quiet endurance matters. The fact that you are still here, still trying, still soft enough to feel all of this, that is not weakness. That is the whole point. Tonight you chose rest over relentless doing. That is not a small thing. That is, in its own unhurried way, everything. The room holds you now, the blanket warm and undemanding, the darkness complete and kind, the air cool at the edges, still, like the world has exhaled for the last time tonight and found it enough. The breath slows, the body softens, the mind at last lets go of its holding. There is nothing left to solve, nothing left to carry, only this warmth, only this dark, only this breath, and the next. You are safe now, rest now,